Hi there, this is Steve Hackett. You're listening to Mystery Tour.
Mickey from Italy. Hi, Mickey from Italy. How are you?
Quite fine, thank you. So, dear Steve, there's a tour de force going on, and what shall the Italian fans expect from your shows?
Well, in recent years, I've been doing a mixture of solo things and Genesis things. I divided into 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the spirit of what I do is very much in the same spirit as Genesis in the days of classic Genesis. So I find that very heartwarming, that people that have no idea of the history enjoy the fact that it's atmospheric music which goes through a number of changes. I wouldn't say that I enjoy the term progressive music, because that isn't what when we were working together on this stuff in the Genesis days, nobody used the term progressive. That's just something that has been added afterwards. And I think it robs the music of its surprise if you say something fits into a progressive slot. So when I'm working on new stuff, I find myself working with Indian musicians, and I've got some gospel singing and all sorts of things that really don't fit into that category. But I think of the days of the Beatles, where people started to really experiment with things, where you could have any kind of music, and music that is surprising and a collision of styles is basically where I feel most comfortable. I like the idea of it functioning like scenes from a film that keep changing. And if that's progressive, then fine. But I like my influences to be very broad-based. I draw from so many different sources, really, these days.
What can you tell us about the WindWuthering DVD you released in January?
Yeah, well, the album was called Wuthering Nights, and it celebrated the fact that it was 40 years since the release of Wind and Wuthering. So when it was played last year, it was the 40th anniversary of that. So the response to the album has been staggeringly good. It's one of the best-selling things I've ever done. It has many titles from Wind and Wuthering, and also a track which was recorded at the same time as Wind and Wuthering in 1977, which was Inside and Out, which should have really gone on the album, but because of time constraints back in the day, we didn't do that. So when I do this stuff, I try and add something that is not necessarily the entire album, but highlights and a kind of director's cut. The idea that I think, this deleted scene should be included in the best of the Wind and Wuthering stuff.
We are reading on your website that you are already well into recording the next album. So what shall we expect?
Many different styles, I think. But when you're in the middle of an album, you don't really realize how varied it is. You know, you're dealing with each song as it comes up. And for instance, I was working the other day with two girls who have worked with Pink Floyd. Two sisters who are very well known. They've been on the last 4 albums by Pink Floyd, and have toured with them extensively. And that's Durga and Lorelei McBroom. It's the McBroom sisters, and they've really got very, very powerful voices. So they've been used in a kind of gospel style, and they just sound absolutely wonderful. It's a real powerhouse, the stuff that I've done with them. And then there's another lady that I've been working with called Shima, who is a virtuoso sitar player. I've been working with her on something. And so those two aspects bookend what I think of as things borrowed from world music. And as the album progresses, I will start to use more instruments that have less to do with rock and roll and have more to do with regional influences. So what I tend to do is construct songs and then add the coloring once one already has the framework. And it's a very exciting process, seeing these things come to fruition. So whenever I record an album, I always think, it's a big mountain to climb, because if people like the previous album, it's always a challenge. And then I get to the point when I realize I'm very excited about it, because it takes a lot of work to do a really good album. It takes a whole ton of work to come up with the ideas, which I write with my wife Jo. We've written a lot of things together. And then when I start recording it with Roger King, he gets involved in the writing as well, and the other people that we bring in. So it's a team, of course, that builds every album. There's no such thing as a solo album. That's just nonsense, really. It's like saying, Cecil B. DeMille made the film, but hey, what about all the actors? Thank you very much. The team, the cast is hugely important for me.
In The Night Siren, there is a strong peace-related message in the song West to East you wrote with your wife.
Yes. There's that, and also in the song Behind the Smoke, because they really bookend the album in a way, and I think the new album has aspects of that as well. There are social comment issues which come up, so I think essentially it's about peace, and it's also about spirituality and about struggle and many of those things, and those are just the songs so far. So once I finish it, it'll go around the world a couple of other times, I'm sure.
Which suggestions, advices would you give to young musicians who want to do progressive music nowadays in these difficult times?
Well, I think that if you feel something, then you must do it. You've got to answer the call. The muse can be very demanding and arrive at very inconvenient times, and there might be a lot of criticism, but if you feel instinctively that something is right, it's important not to be talked out of it, and to follow your own path and your own goal. And you must stick up for the quality of your own ideas and get the best out of yourself, because I think if you get the best out of yourself and the people you're working with, you have a very good chance of getting through to a wide public. People might say it's difficult for a new band because blah, 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 blah. But then you hear a band like the English band like Muse, for instance, who take the concept of Muse literally and use it for their band title. And what they do is in the spirit of progressive music, everything from Chopin to Prince, the influences. And you just have to stick with that. And as you build a following and make your stage presentation better and better, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to make a living at it. I mean, don't forget, there's always been people who criticized, when the Beatles were first formed and they were trying to get a record deal, people were turning down Brian Epstein, saying, it's really instrumental bands that are all the rage these days, and people aren't really interested in singing groups. The day has passed for that. And if someone, had taken that literally and said, I've been told that the game's up, that's it. You've always got to fight against critics, and you have to fight adversity. But the one thing that cannot be defeated is yourself. You are the real. You have the ability to qualify or disqualify yourself, and if you throw in the towel, and say, yeah, I'm not prepared to fight anymore, you are never going to win.
Yeah.
So you have to be tenacious.
Yeah.
You have to really believe in what you're doing, and then you can compel everybody to embrace all of your ideas, no matter how strange or unfashionable or unlikely.
Are you still in touch with the guys from Genesis? Have you talked to them recently?
The last time I saw them was at the release of Richard MacPhail's book, and that was very interesting to see them. And so, yes, that was just a few months ago. I haven't seen them for a while, but it was 4 out of 5 of us were there for that. Yeah, so there is contact. We don't hang out every night of the week together.
Yeah.
And it's probably unlikely that we will all work together again because we've all got so much freedom doing our own things. But you never know; it might happen one day. But that's the question people always want to know: is if there's going to be a reformation. And I would say, yeah, it's all things are possible in the future. But meanwhile, I like to honor the music that we did together and do the best of the music of Genesis, absolutely politics free. So in October I'll be doing a British tour with an orchestra.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that. But my band is like a mini orchestra anyway. The sound is very big and glorious. They sound wonderful every night of the week. So I love working with them. They're a terrific band.
Which invitation would you send out to the Italian fans to join you on your Italian tour de force in July?
Well, I would say the invitation is it will be the concert will be surprising. It's full of great stuff. It really is full of really wonderful songs. Some of which I wrote, but many which are written by the other people that I worked with. I mentioned the idea of a team again, and the team that built these songs, all of them, I think, were terrific. So I think it will be a great concert. I always love coming to Italy. The Italian fans always make it a huge event every concert. So the enthusiasm seems to grow and grow. So that's wonderful, because I do the music that I love, whether it's new or old. It's no different to me. Great music is timeless.